Thanks for being here. And if you're not actually in this room, welcome to San Antonio, Texas, where we're broadcasting from for today. Some of you have been here before. How many of you have been to presentations I've done for you before? Cool. Who hasn't? Yeah, please don't make this your only one. You've got some other places that you need to go to find out things as well. You have some workbook materials there in front of you, don't you? We think there's 47 pages worth of text material about what you need to know about being a security officer within a bank in whatever state you happen to be in. There's also my fantasy job description of what it is that I foresee that you all need to be doing in your role as security officer too. But not all of you are security folks. So who in here is the security officer for your bank? Cool. Who in here is not? And you are an auditor, are you not? Okay, I like auditors too. We're going to talk about auditors. Who's been in this job for less than a year? Who volunteered for it? One person. Okay. Everybody else got by default. You got drafted. You were in danger of failing your next performance review. You'd irritated somebody or whatever. Or you went on vacation and they selected you while you were out of the room. We're going to talk about all the different things today that a security officer for an organization, a bank, needs to do or to comply with. So we do have compliance issues that are in here. We have audit issues, certainly BSA, and the Bank Protection Act. So you should know, if you've not been to one of my presentations before, that I'm not a banker. I never have been a banker. I'm a security person. My background goes to law enforcement and in working for folks like you for probably about the last 30 years or so. Now, this is my 40th year of crime. I've been doing crime for 40 years. I'm on your side. I think up all the rotten, nasty things that one person can do to another one, then figure out ways to make that not happen. So what I'm going to bring to you today is obviously some opinions, but more facts than opinions. And I do encourage presentations, if you've been to, or questions and answers. If you've been to my presentations before, you know I like to call on folks. And I like to, get your viewpoint on certain things. You can wave me off. It's purely voluntary. You can ask me to go away. I will come back to you, however, for the next question. But in the meantime, I like the involvement. So if you plan on sitting there all day long and not doing anything, you can do that. That's perfectly okay. But I would really appreciate your involvement. And if you're on a remote site witnessing this today or participating, please forward your questions in to Sharon, and she will get those to me. So we do like those things. You got workbook material, right, Isaac? Okay. And if you will, even if you've been here before in this particular presentation, which is about the security function, some things have changed, and some things are going to be changing. This is a pre-conference to the next day and a half, in which we bring in several other speakers to share their expertise on other kinds of topics, and 4 of them I know you've not heard any presentations about before. So my organizational product for you, your workbook today, is a prelude to the things that you're going to learn for the remainder of the week. Your workbook is separated out into 4 different parts. There is an introduction to security, there is security personnel, we talk about the department, and then laws, rules, and regulations. My PowerPoints will reflect where we are on the headings that you have in your workbook material, and some of the things in there, because there's 47 pages worth of stuff. We're not going to go through that and read that today. I'm going to show you how this works. Show you the regulations, the laws, the rules, policies, procedures, practices, whatever it is you need to do, and then go back and reference the material that you have there. Are you okay on that part so far too? It's your day. If you need to pack up and go, how many of you don't have a designated backup for the security officer position within your, okay. So you're here, they're there. What happens if something happens back at work today and you're here? And so we're going to talk about that one also. So I expect that some of you are going to get text messages and emails and stuff like that saying, help me, while you're here, because it happens every time. If so, please go ahead and turn your cell phones off or put them on stun, whatever it is you need to do. And go ahead and take care of your business. I would expect that you would do that. My obligation to you doesn't end as of today. So if you got questions or comments afterwards, there's some folks in the room, we've been running around together for almost 20 years. You still call and you still ask questions, and I hope to come up with the best answers. So again, you've got continuing support that goes along with that. Your board of directors has appointed you to be the security officer, and I'm going to start changing this word and start using the term security managers because that's more effective to the things that you do. Security officer has become rather outdated in our culture, and it implies somebody who drools and guards your facilities after a robbery. So we're not looking for security officers. You're a security manager. Your job is to manage the security function. And I don't know exactly how our presentation will go today, Brian. I know you've been in here before. I've delivered this presentation several hundred times. It's never gone the same way twice. It always depends upon the mix of the group. So the more active you are and the busier you are and more questions you have, more answers we can come up with. Bank Protection Act that we'll talk about as we go through here was developed and implemented in 1968. It was appropriate for banks and thrifts around the country. What year is this? This is 2011, right? So a long time ago in ancient history, this regulation came out. It hasn't changed much since then. The last amendment was actually done about 1991, and it's your driving document. It tells you what it is that's expected of a bank anywhere that's operating within the United States. It used to be all about alarms and cameras and robbery procedures and filing SARs, but it's become so much more than it was even just probably 2 years ago. It's a process. It's an evolutionary process by which we provide a safe and secure environment for our employees to work and for our customers to be able to do business. If we're not providing that safe and secure environment, we're not going to get anybody in our lobbies to be able to do anything, and the bank's going to fold. So we create this environment, but it is evolutionary. Who in here works for a bank that's ever been robbed? Did you notice that life as you knew it changed as soon as that robber's heel hit the door? You had to implement a whole variety of things that you may not have even had a process in writing at the time to be able to do, but it became evolutionary. You locked the doors, audit came in, and your first name, ma'am, because you're my auditor today? Danielle. Auditor came in, fine counted the entire organization, we accounted for everybody, we took care of their medical needs, we identified customers, we worked with the law enforcement agency. We did all these things, right? And then hopefully you escalated your security environment as a result of that, or your employees would not come to work tomorrow and your customers would not come back into your lobby. So perhaps you installed a security guard for a couple of weeks, which is a common practice. Perhaps you hired an off-duty cop to be able to come in for a couple of weeks to make people feel better, to open the doors, to provide some kind of an authority presence around your bank. So it became evolutionary. And after a couple of weeks, after people's fear started to decline, then the bank's interest started to decline also, and the amount of money that the bank would spend in providing this environment also continued to decline. Does this sound reasonable to you? So security is not static. It is something that is active all the time, and it certainly does create some kind of an evolutionary issue with you. Your board of directors, however, how many of you have read through the Bank Protection Act? I mean, read it. One. Okay, and you're the security manager in charge of all this, right? So your first homework assignment is to get a copy. Any of you use Bankers Online as a resource? Okay, so I moderate several of the forums on Bankers Online. We're volunteers, Brian, in there. We don't get paid for any of that stuff, but we have a good time while we're in there doing it. So if you've gone up and retrieved things, we ask you to go back and deposit things as well that your peers will be able to use along the way. Bank Protection Act went into play in 1968. You're responsible for doing this, but your board of directors needs to know what their responsibilities are also, because you work for them. So let me be really clear, Brian. You work for the board of directors. You do not work for your president. You don't work for the director of human resources. You don't work for audit or retail operations. You work for the board of directors, period. But how many of you have an intermediary that you report to on a daily basis? And that part's perfectly all right, too, because somebody needs to supervise you along the way. But your board may have a very outdated viewpoint about what the security function is really all about. Your workbook material is something I encourage you to make photocopy of, and because I own the copyright, I can do this. So you go ahead and make a photocopy and forward it to your board of directors. After we're done with this session for 2.5 days, I'd like you to go back to your board and say, on one side of the paper, here are all the things that I believe that we're doing right. Over here, I'd like you to go back and explain to the board, here are the things that we either need to be improving or we suck at, whichever it is that you want to use that particular term. And yes, I know I'm on video, but that's what, you can fire me? Hi, Alan.